Have you ever thought about how a single river can hold the key to peace or conflict for entire nations? For millennia, the Nile River has been the lifeblood of Northeast Africa, a cradle of civilization. But today, this ancient river is at the center of a modern-day storm, a geopolitical struggle that threatens to reshape the future of millions. The source of this tension: a colossal structure rising from the Blue Nile in Ethiopia, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or GERD. For Ethiopia, the GERD isn't just a dam. It represents a defining chapter in the nation's modern identity. It is a project funded largely by its own citizens, students, workers, farmers, and diaspora communities who contributed through bonds, donations, and public campaigns. This makes it not only an infrastructure project but a collective achievement, a testament to national resilience and the determination to shape a self-reliant future. The dam promises to generate enough electricity to transform daily life, bringing power to over 60 million people who currently live without reliable access. With expanded energy, Ethiopia aims to boost industrialization, improve education and healthcare services, and reduce economic disparities between urban and rural regions. On a broader scale, the GERD represents Ethiopia's aspiration to shift from aid dependence to sustainable development, leveraging its natural resources responsibly to drive growth. It is seen as a step toward lifting millions out of poverty and laying the foundation for long-term economic stability and regional influence. In this sense, the GERD is more than concrete and turbines. It is a symbol of possibility, of what Ethiopia believes it can become. It represents a dream of harnessing their own natural resources for a brighter future, one where development is driven not by external aid or foreign dependency, but by the strength, ingenuity, and determination of the Ethiopian people themselves. For decades, Ethiopia has watched the waters of the Blue Nile flow outward, benefiting others while millions within the country lived without electricity, struggling under the limitations of energy scarcity. The GERD is seen as a turning point, a moment when the nation takes charge of its own destiny, using its own rivers to power its schools, hospitals, farms, and industries. This dream is deeply emotional. It is tied to identity, dignity, and the belief that prosperity should not be a privilege granted by others but a right earned through effort and unity. The GERD embodies that belief. It stands for a future where children study at night under electric light instead of candles, where businesses grow beyond subsistence, and where Ethiopia steps confidently onto the global stage as a developing nation building progress from within. But what is a dream for one nation is not necessarily a potential nightmare for its downstream neighbors, Egypt and Sudan. Let's travel downstream to Egypt. Here, the Nile isn't just a river. It's everything. Over 95% of Egypt's 110 million people live along its fertile banks, and the country relies on it for almost all of its fresh water. Any reduction in the Nile's flow is viewed as an existential threat by them. However, Ethiopia's dam uses the water only to generate electricity. The water continues downstream after passing through the turbines, so it does not need to be withheld permanently. They see the GERD as a tap that Ethiopia can turn off at will, jeopardizing their agriculture, their economy, and their very survival. Historical treaties have long granted Egypt a majority share of the Nile's water, but Ethiopia argues those agreements are colonial-era relics that unfairly excluded them. Caught in the middle is Sudan. On one hand, the GERD could regulate the Nile's unpredictable flooding and provide cheaper electricity. On the other hand, a mismanaged dam could wreak havoc on their own smaller dams and water systems. This high-stakes triangle of interests has turned diplomatic negotiations into a tense standoff, with each nation's future hanging in the balance. So, how does this political drama translate to your dinner plate? The connection is direct and deeply worrying. Agriculture is the backbone of these economies. In Egypt, the fertile Nile Delta is the country's breadbasket. Any decrease in water flow means less water for irrigation. This directly impacts the cultivation of staple crops like wheat, rice, and vegetables, the very foundation of the local diet. Imagine being a farmer in the Nile Delta, a profession passed down through generations. The river they rely on is one of the largest in the world. It will not simply become scarce overnight, so there is no need for alarm. Similar hydropower systems have been used globally for centuries without reducing downstream water availability. Your fields won't dry up, your crop yields won't plummet, and your livelihood won't disappear in this case. This is a hypothetical fear scenario that keeps millions awake at night. If the reverse happens, that is, when local food production drops, countries are forced to import more food from the global market, where prices are volatile. And supply chains can be fragile. This creates a ripple effect. Food prices in local markets soar, making basic necessities unaffordable for the average family. The price of bread, a staple for millions, could skyrocket. This isn't just an economic problem. It's a humanitarian one. It deepens poverty, fuels social unrest, and pushes communities to the brink of a food crisis. Now let's talk about diet. For many communities in this region, a plant-based diet isn't a lifestyle choice. It's a matter of tradition and affordability. Lentils, beans, fava beans known as full, and a variety of vegetables are cornerstones of daily meals. These crops are relatively water-intensive. When water becomes a point of conflict, the first things to be threatened are the very foods that sustain the population. A reduction in water availability could force a shift in what can be grown. Farmers might be pushed towards cultivating less thirsty, but potentially less nutritious, cash crops for export, instead of the diverse vegetables that feed their own communities. This would disrupt traditional diets that have nourished people for centuries. It could lead to what experts call hidden hunger, a lack of essential vitamins and minerals, even if calorie intake remains the same. The stability of a healthy, plant-rich diet for millions is directly tied to the flow of the Nile. This isn't a distant problem. The stability of this entire region, home to over 250 million people, is at stake. A water dispute that spirals into a food crisis can easily ignite wider conflict, creating instability that ripples across Africa and beyond. We're talking about the potential for mass displacement, refugee crises, and a humanitarian disaster that would require a massive international response. So what's the way out? Is conflict inevitable? Absolutely not. But the window for a peaceful solution is closing. The answer doesn't lie in confrontation, but in cooperation. This crisis demands a shift in mindset from viewing the Nile's water as a resource to be owned, to seeing it as a shared treasure to be managed collectively. It's super important for Ethiopia and the downstream countries to come together and cooperate on these green legacy initiatives. Working hand in hand can really help tackle drought, challenges, and the problems that come with it. Teamwork is key, right? By collaborating, everyone can benefit and find solutions that work for all. This would provide the predictability and security that Egypt and Sudan desperately need, while still allowing Ethiopia to achieve its development goals. It's about finding a balance that respects the rights and needs of all three nations. Beyond treaties, the solution must involve technology and innovation, investing in more efficient irrigation techniques like drip irrigation can drastically reduce water waste. Promoting drought-resistant crops can ensure food security even with less water, and collaborative projects on water conservation and management can benefit everyone. Imagine joint research centers where Ethiopian, Sudanese, and Egyptian scientists work together to maximize the Nile's potential for all. This is a human issue, not just a political one. It's about farmers trying to feed their families, about children needing clean water to drink, and about nations striving for a better future. The Nile has sustained civilizations for thousands of years. It has been a source of life, unity, and inspiration. Now it presents a critical test for modern diplomacy. By transforming this potential conflict into a model of regional cooperation, the nations of the Nile can secure not only their water and food, but also a future of shared peace and prosperity. The world is watching. Let's hope the region's leaders choose the path of cooperation rather than confrontation, recognizing that the Nile is not just a strategic resource, but a lifeline that sustains millions of people across multiple nations. Its waters nourish farms, fuel energy production, and provide drinking water to communities from the highlands of Ethiopia to the delta in Egypt. A shared river demands shared responsibility. If diplomacy prevails, the Nile can continue to symbolize connection, interdependence, and shared future prosperity, instead of becoming a flashpoint for rivalry or mistrust. The decisions made today will shape not only the stability of the region, but the well-being of future generations, who will depend on this same river. Ensuring cooperation now means ensuring life, growth, and peace tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. If you found this topic as important as I do, please hit that like button, subscribe to eGreen channel for more content that matters, and share this video to help raise awareness. See you in the next one.